Imagine a world where the language of music transcends every physical border, where 7 young men from a tiny, struggling agency in Seoul managed to rewrite the entire blueprint of global superstardom. We aren't just talking about catchy tunes or synchronized dance moves anymore. We are talking about a cultural earthquake that shifted the very axis of the music industry forever. Have you ever wondered what it truly takes to dismantle a system that was never built for you? How does a group not only reach the summit but build an entirely new mountain that sits way above the clouds? Today, we are diving deep into a legacy that feels more like a myth than reality. We're peeling back the layers of a phenomenon that turned the impossible into a daily routine. From the dusty practice rooms of 2013 to the hallowed halls of the United Nations and the Grammys, their journey is paved with milestones that don't just look like numbers, they look like miracles captured in digital stone. But here is the real kicker. In an industry that moves at the speed of light, where trends die before they even fully bloom, there are some achievements so massive, so statistically insane, that they might just stay locked in the history books forever. Are we witnessing a once-in-a-century anomaly? Could any other artist, no matter how talented or backed by millions, ever hope to touch these specific heights again? Or has the bar been set so high that the ceiling has finally vanished? Get ready, because we are about to count down the feats that redefined what it means to be a legend in the 21st century. These aren't just trophies, they are scars of a revolution. Let's explore the 7 BTS records that are so legendary, they might actually be untouchable until the end of time. Buckle up, because this isn't just a list, it's a testament to a power that changed the world. Do you think you know every record they've smashed? Think again, because some of these will make you question the very limits of human achievement and fan devotion. This is the ultimate deep dive into the legacy of the kings of the modern era. Are you ready to see the records that might never, ever be broken as long as music exists? Number 7. Artist of the Year at the Mama Awards. Net Asian Music Awards. The Daesang Dynasty. 7 years of pure dominance, the absolute peak of global music history. To truly understand why this record is widely considered the Everest of the music industry, we have to travel back to a time when the world looked very different, specifically to the year 2016, as a moment that shifted the tectonic plates of the global entertainment landscape forever. You see, in the fiercely competitive world of K-pop, there is a hierarchy that everyone thought was set in stone, a system dominated by the big 3 agencies, where a small group from a struggling, nearly bankrupt label like Big Hit Entertainment was never supposed to even sit at the table, let alone own the whole room. When BTS won their very first Artist of the Year Daesang at the 2016 Mnet Asian Music Awards, the collective gasp of the industry was deafening because it wasn't just a trophy, it was a revolution, a signal that the underdog had finally bitten back. But what makes this record impossible to break isn't just that first win, it's the sheer, mind-numbing consistency that followed. As they went on to claim the Artist of the Year title for 7 consecutive years, from 2016 all the way through 2022. Just think about the sheer psychological and physical toll of staying at the absolute summit of the most fast-paced industry on the planet for nearly a decade. Most groups are lucky to have a prime that lasts 3 years. Yet BTS managed to expand their prime into a multi-generational epic. This specific record at Mama is a statistical anomaly because the awards are based on a complex cocktail of physical sales, digital streaming, global voting, and professional judging, meaning you can't just buy or luck your way into this. You have to be the undisputed choice of the entire planet year after year. The year 2019 was perhaps the most terrifying display of this dominance, when BTS achieved what many called the all-kill, or the clean sweep, taking home every single grand prize, Daesang, available in a single night, including Artist of the Year, Album of the Year, Song of the Year, and Worldwide Icon of the Year, a feat so overwhelming it actually forced award shows to reconsider their categories, because one group was simply too big for the stage. We are talking about a period where they weren't just competing against other K-pop groups, they were competing against their own previous shadows, constantly outdoing Blood, Sweat and Tears with DNA, then Fake Love, then the world-shaking Boy with Love, and finally the Dynamite era that turned them into household names in every corner of the earth. The emotional weight of this record reached its fever pitch in 2018, a year that fans remember with tears and shivers because it was on that Mama stage, while holding the Artist of the Year trophy, that they revealed they had considered disbanding earlier that year due to the immense pressure of their sudden fame. That moment of raw, bleeding honesty transformed them from mere idols into cultural icons who shared their pain with millions, creating a bond with their fanbase, ARMY, that is more like a religion than a fandom. When you look at the numbers, the gap between BTS and whoever is in second place is so vast it looks like a typographical error. They have accumulated over 70 daesangs across all Korean award shows, but the 7-year Mama Artist of the Year streak is the crown jewel because it tracks their evolution from social media darlings to global titans. To break this record, a new artist would not only need to debut and immediately become the biggest thing in the world, but they would have to maintain that exact level of explosive growth and cultural relevance without a single dip for 8 straight years, in an era where the human attention span is shorter than a TikTok video. It requires a perfect storm of talent, timing, a revolutionary marketing strategy, and a level of group chemistry where 7 distinct personalities remain perfectly synchronized through military enlistments, solo careers, and the heavy crown of being the pride of a nation. It is a record built on the blood, sweat, and tears of 7 men who were told they weren't good enough, only to end up being the only ones left standing at the top of the mountain. Every time they stepped onto that mama stage, the atmosphere changed. It wasn't just an awards ceremony anymore, it was a coronation, a yearly reminder that the BTS era wasn't a phase or a trend, but a permanent shift in how humanity consumes music. Even now, as the industry moves into the 5th generation of K-pop, the shadows of those 7 trophies loom so large that every new achievement by others is inevitably measured against the standard BTS set, a standard that feels less like a goal and more like a legend from an ancient era. Can you even imagine the level of dedication it takes to never miss a beat, to never lose the fire, and to keep an entire world captivated for 2,555 days straight? This isn't just about music, it's about the endurance of the human spirit and a level of dominance that we might never see repeated in our lifetime, or perhaps in the history of music as we know it. The Mama Artist of the Year record is more than a statistic. It is the physical manifestation of a miracle that happened in real time, proving that while many can reach the top, only BTS could move the mountain itself. As the lights dim on each award season, the question remains, is there anyone even capable of dreaming this big again, or has the Artist of the Year title essentially been retired in the hearts of the public? This record stands as a monolithic testament to the fact that for 7 years, the world had only one heartbeat, and it beat to the rhythm of 7 boys from Seoul who refused to let the world tell them no. Number 6. The Billboard Hot 100 Monopoly. The fastest 6 number 1 hits since the Beatles. The impossible chart takeover, the death of the glass ceiling. To truly grasp the magnitude of what we are talking about here, you have to stop thinking about BTS as just a boy band and start viewing them as a literal force of nature that collided with the most impenetrable fortress in the music world, the United States Billboard Hot 100. For decades, the Western music industry operated under an invisible but very real glass ceiling, a barrier that whispered to any artist not singing in English or not backed by a massive American machine that they could visit the charts, but they could never own them. But then came the era between 2020 and 2021, a period that historians will one day look back on as the BTS occupation of the American airwaves. We are talking about a record so statistically improbable that it hadn't been seen since the British invasion of the 1960 seconds. BTS managed to land 6 number 1 songs on the Hot 100 inches, just over a year, 1 year, and 1 month, to be precise. To put that in perspective, the only other act to achieve such a rapid succession of chart toppers was the Beatles themselves, back in 1964 and 1966. Think about that for a second. We are comparing 7 guys from South Korea to the most influential band in the history of Western civilization. The streak began with the explosion of Dynamite in September 2020, a song that didn't just break the ice, it shattered the entire frozen ocean. It was their first all-English track, a gift to a world suffering through the isolation of the pandemic, and it debuted at number 1, making them the first Korean act ever to reach that summit. But while critics were ready to call it a one-hit wonder or a fluke of the digital age, BTS was just getting started. They followed it up with the Savage Love remix, and then came the moment that truly defied the laws of physics in the music industry. Life Goes On. This wasn't a bright, poppy English track designed for radio. It was a soulful, pop, reflective Korean language ballad. When Life Goes On debuted at number 1, it became the first song primarily in a non-English language to ever debut at the top of the Hot 100 Inches, the chart's 62-year history. That moment right there was the ultimate mic drop to every gatekeeper who said you had to change your language to be successful in the West. But the momentum didn't stop. Then came the Butter era in the summer of 2021, a song that didn't just hit number 1, it camped out there. Butter spent a staggering 10 weeks at the top, becoming the longest-running number 1 hit of 2021, holding off global superstars and domestic titans alike. And in a move that felt like a scripted movie plot, Butter was eventually knocked off the number 1 spot by none other than BTS themselves with Permission to Dance. This self-replacement at the top of the charts is a feat so rare that only a handful of legends like Drake, Taylor Swift, and the Beatles have ever done it. They capped off this historic run with My Universe, their collaboration with Coldplay, proving that even the legends of the West were now lining up to be part of the BTS orbit. Now, standing here in 2026, looking back at that 2-year stretch, the record feels even more untouchable because the rules of the game have changed. Shortly after BTS dominated the charts, Billboard actually altered its rules regarding bulk purchases and digital sales, many believe specifically to curb the unprecedented power of the BTS army. This means that the exact path BTS took to achieve those 6 number 1s is now essentially illegal under current chart regulations. They didn't just break the record, they broke the system so thoroughly that the system had to be rewritten to prevent it from happening again. It was a perfect storm of a global fandom's unmatched mobilization and a group's relentless creative output. The emotional weight of this achievement cannot be overstated. It was the sound of millions of fans around the world saying, "We will make you listen." It was the ultimate validation for a group that was once told they were too niche or too foreign for the American mainstream. When you look at the speed of those 6 number 1s, you aren't just looking at sales figures. You are looking at the moment the global music industry's center of gravity shifted from the West to the East. It required a level of synchronized effort that feels more like a military operation than a music release. To break this record today, an artist would need to overcome not just the competition, but the new, stricter Billboard algorithms that are designed to favor radio play, a metric that has traditionally been biased against non-Western artists. BTS achieved this dominance while being largely ignored by US terrestrial radio for years, making their chart success a purely democratic victory fueled by the people. It's a record that screams impossible because it was achieved against the wind, against the grain, and against every historical precedent. Can you imagine the pressure of having the entire world waiting to see if you can do it again, only to come back and do it 5 more times in 14 months? This record is the definitive proof that BTS didn't just join the elite, they redefined what the elite looks like. They turned the Billboard Hot 100 into their personal playground, and the echoes of that takeover are still vibrating through the industry today. It's a legacy of defiance, a story of 7 men who looked at the highest wall in music and decided to simply fly over it. As we move further into the future, the 6-13 record remains a shining golden lighthouse, a reminder of the time when 7 boys from Seoul became the undisputed kings of the world's most influential music market. Does anyone else possess the sheer cultural gravity to pull off a feat like this ever again? Or was this a once-in-a-lifetime cosmic alignment that we were lucky enough to witness? The numbers say it's a miracle, the history books say it's a revolution, but the fans know it was simply the inevitable result of a bond that no chart rule could ever break. Number 5. Guinness World Record for most viewed YouTube video in 24 hours? The Digital Apocalypse. The 108 million view miracle. The day the internet stood still. To truly understand why this record feels like something pulled straight out of a sci-fi novel, you have to imagine the sheer scale of the digital universe and how, for one 24-hour period in May 2021, the entire world seemed to funnel its collective energy into a single link. We are talking about the release of Butter, a song that didn't just break the internet, it essentially redesigned the way we perceive digital power and the influence of a global community. Before BTS, the idea of hitting 100 million views in a single day was considered a mathematical impossibility, a theoretical ceiling that experts believed no human being or marketing machine could ever pierce. But as we've learned through history, BTS doesn't just look for ceilings, they look for new galaxies to inhabit. The previous record was already held by them with Dynamite, which had clocked in at an insane 101.1 million views. But when Butter dropped, the numbers didn't just climb. They exploded in a way that actually caused the YouTube servers to struggle with the sheer volume of data being processed. On the 21st of May 2021, at exactly 1 p.m. KST, 3.9 million people were already waiting in a virtual room just to watch the premiere simultaneously, which is another world record in itself. Imagine filling the largest stadium on Earth 40 times over, all at the exact same second, just to catch a glimpse of a music video. As the clock started ticking, the view count became a blur of digits that the human eye couldn't even track. But here is where the impossible part kicks in. YouTube's algorithm is notoriously one of the most sophisticated and ruthless pieces of code in existence, designed to detect bots, filter out repetitive plays, and trim any views it deems illegitimate. For years, fandoms across the globe had been in a constant war with this algorithm, watching in frustration as millions of views would disappear during the first few hours of a release. Yet, even with the algorithm working at maximum intensity to verify every single click, Butter managed to finish its first 24 hours with a staggering 108.2 million verified views. Think about the logistics of that for a moment. That is roughly 1,250, 2 views every single second for an entire day and night. It's like the entire population of the Philippines or the combined populations of several European countries all deciding to sit down and watch the same 3-minute video within the same day. What makes this record likely to remain unbroken forever isn't just the number itself, but the fact that YouTube has since implemented even stricter policies regarding how views are counted and how streaming is handled, making it exponentially harder for any artist, no matter how popular, to reach that triple-digit million mark again. It was a perfect, once-in-a-lifetime alignment of a global lockdown where everyone was glued to their screens, a fandom that had reached its absolute peak of mobilization and organizational genius, and a song that had a viral DNA built into its very rhythm. The emotional atmosphere during those 24 hours was electric. It wasn't just about watching a video, it was about a global family of millions, spread across every time zone from New York to Jakarta to Paris, staying awake, coordinating streaming parties, and sharing the pure, unadulterated joy of seeing 7 men from Seoul conquer the digital throne once again. There was a sense of collective purpose that transcended music. It was a statement to the gatekeepers of the industry that the new power had arrived, and it was digital, democratic, and unstoppable. When you look back at the behind-the-scenes footage of the members reacting to these numbers, you see a mix of humble disbelief and a deep, quiet realization that they had moved beyond the realm of idols and into the realm of historical anomalies. The Butter record is a monument to a specific era of human connectivity that might never be replicated because the digital landscape is fragmenting, and the sheer unity required to push one single point of focus to 108 million views is a miracle of social engineering and love. It's a record that proves that when millions of hearts beat to the same rhythm, even the most advanced computer code in the world has to bow down. To break this, an artist would need to create a cultural moment so loud that it silences every other noise on the planet for an entire day, and in our hyper-distracted world of 2026, that feels more like a dream than a possibility. This wasn't just a win for BTS. It was the ultimate proof that the impossible is just a word used by people who haven't met the army yet. It remains the gold standard of digital dominance, a towering 108 million foot tall skyscraper in the middle of the internet that everyone can see, but no one can climb. Every time a new artist debuts or a major star makes a comeback, the question is always, can they touch the 100 million mark? And so far, the answer has been a resounding no. It stands as a testament to a time when 7 voices and 1 fandom became a digital tsunami that reshaped the coastline of pop culture forever, leaving a mark that the tide of time might never be able to wash away. Number 4. Best-selling album of all time in South Korea, Map of the Soul, 7. The 5 million copy milestone, the unrivaled physical dynasty, the album that broke the Korean record books forever. Think about the sheer physical weight of 5 million objects, each one a piece of art, a vessel of stories, and a symbol of a connection that spans the entire globe. We are talking about a record that didn't just break the scales, it completely recalibrated what we thought was possible in a digital-first world. To understand why Map of the Soul 7 is the ultimate untouchable titan, we have to travel back to the late 90s seconds, the so-called golden age of Korean physical music, when legends like Kim Gunmo held a record of 3.3 million copies that everyone, literally everyone in the industry assumed would stand until the end of time because, let's be real, the world moved to streaming and physical CDs, became collector's items rather than necessities. But BTS looked at that permanent record and decided to rewrite history with a level of ambition that felt almost mythological, releasing Map of the Soul 7 in February 2020 as a grand, sprawling celebration of their 7 years together, 7 members, and a journey that had taken them from the basement to the stars. The numbers that started rolling in weren't just high, they were terrifyingly unprecedented, with pre-orders alone smashing through the 4 million mark before a single soul had even heard the full track list, proving that the bond between BTS and the ARMY wasn't just about music, it was about an absolute, unwavering trust. When the album finally dropped, it was a philosophical masterpiece, a deep dive into the shadow and ego of the human psyche based on Jungian psychology, featuring tracks like The Thunderous On and the hauntingly beautiful Black Swan, and as the sales figures climbed to 4.1, 4.2, and eventually passed the 5 million mark on the Gaon chart, now Circle chart, the world realized they weren't just looking at a successful album, they were looking at a cultural monument. This record is widely considered impossible to break in the modern era because of a fundamental shift in how people consume media. In 2026, we live in a world of hyperfragmentation and 15-second soundbites, making the idea of 5 million people going out of their way to purchase a full-length, physical, high-concept Korean album feel like a beautiful relic from a more unified time. Each of the 7 members poured their entire souls into this project, with solo tracks that acted as personal confessionals. Think about the vulnerability in V's Inner Child, where he spoke to his younger self in a way that made millions of fans weep, or the sleek, introspective energy of Jungkook's My Time, where he grappled with a childhood spent in the blinding spotlight of global fame. Then you have Jimin's Filter, a track so charismatic and versatile that it became a social media phenomenon in its own right, showcasing his ability to morph into whatever the world needs him to be, yet remaining profoundly himself. The production scale was equally insane, taking over Grand Central Terminal in New York for a performance of Own that felt more like a military invasion of the world's cultural capital, a moment that stayed etched in our collective memory as the last great hurrah before the world went into lockdown. What makes this 5 million-plus record truly locked in history is the sheer logistical and emotional mobilization required. To even come close to this, a new artist would need a fandom that is not just large, but fanatically organized and deeply invested in the physical tangibility of the music, a trait that the BTS ARMY has perfected into a literal science. Critics often point out that while Western artists might dominate digital play, BTS operates on a level of devotional economy, where every purchase is a vote of confidence, a brick in the fortress of their legacy, and Map of the Soul. 7 is the tallest tower in that fortress. There's a profound reflection here about the nature of the number 7. It's the number of completion, of perfection, and in this album, it represented the culmination of a decade of struggle, of being the underdogs who were mocked for their name, only to become the only artists in history to sell more than 5 million units of a single Korean language project. As we look at the music landscape today, even with the global expansion of K-pop, the numbers are beginning to plateau because the peak physical era of the early 2020s was a unique lightning-in-a-bottle moment that required a specific global climate and a specific group of 7 men who felt like they were carrying the hopes and dreams of an entire generation on their shoulders. When you hold that album in your hands, you aren't just holding plastic and paper, you are holding a piece of the record that proves South Korean culture could not only compete with the West, but could fundamentally outsell, outperform, and outlast the biggest names in Hollywood. It was the moment BTS became bigger than the industry itself, a moment when the limit was officially deleted from their vocabulary. The emotional weight of this achievement is doubled when you realize it happened just as the pandemic was about to separate the group from their fans for 2 long years. Those 5 million albums became the physical anchors that kept the fandom connected during the long, silent months of isolation. Can you imagine the pressure of being the person who has to try and beat this? You aren't just fighting for sales, you are fighting against a ghost, against a legend, against a moment in time when 7 voices perfectly synchronized to capture the heart of the planet. This record isn't just a number on a chart, it's a permanent scar on the face of the music industry. A reminder that for one glorious moment, physical music wasn't dead, it was more alive than it had ever been, fueled by the love of millions who wanted to own a piece of history. Map of the Soul, 7 remains the gold standard, the unbreakable ceiling, and the definitive proof that while trends come and go, a dynasty built on 5 million physical promises is a dynasty that will never truly fall. The question isn't if anyone will ever break it. The question is, why would they even try when the peak has already been reached by the kings of the era? This record stands as a monolithic achievement that reminds us that sometimes a group comes along that is simply too big for the world to handle, leaving behind a trail of numbers that look less like statistics and more like an impossible dream. Number 3. Billboard Social 50 Chart Longevity, the 200-week reign, the digital fortress of the century, the record that literally forced Billboard to change the rules forever. To truly grasp why this specific milestone is considered the absolute unbreakable wall of the modern music era, we have to travel back to a time when the digital world was a wild frontier, and social media was just beginning to dictate who lived and who died in the court of public opinion, a time when the Billboard Social 50 wasn't just a list, but a battlefield where the biggest stars on the planet fought for every single ounce of relevance and engagement. Launching in 2010, the Social 50 was designed by Billboard to measure the pulse of the internet, tracking the most active artists across Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and Wikipedia. And for years, it was dominated by the literal titans of Western pop culture. Think about the absolute iron grip that Justin Bieber, Rihanna, and Taylor Swift held over this chart, where Bieber's 163 non-consecutive weeks at number 1 was considered a record that would stand for a century, because who could possibly be more social than the person who literally grew up in front of a webcam? But then, on the 29th of October 2016, a 7-member group from South Korea entered the chart at number 1 for the first time, and the world of music analytics was never the same again. What began as a surprising entry turned into a multi-year occupation that defies every law of statistical probability we have ever known in the entertainment business. By February 2020, BTS didn't just break Justin Bieber's long-standing record, they absolutely demolished it, passing the 164-week mark, and then just never leaving. Staying at the summit for an unfathomable 210 weeks in total, with a streak of 180 consecutive weeks that felt like a permanent coronation of 7 kings who had figured out a secret language of connection that the rest of the world was still trying to translate. This record is widely cited as impossible because it wasn't just about a marketing team posting pre-scheduled photos. It was about RM, Jin, Suga, J-Hope, Jimin, V, and Jungkook turning their social media presence into a living, breathing diary that millions of people felt they were co-authoring every single day through every like, every retweet, and every mention. Imagine the sheer psychological endurance required to maintain that level of global engagement without a single week of cooling off for nearly 4 straight years. It means that even on their days off, even when they were traveling between time zones, even during the quietest moments of their lives, the sheer magnitude of the conversation surrounding them was so loud it drowned out every other artist on the planet combined. When you look at the raw data from that era, the gap between BTS at number 1 and whoever was at number 2 was often so massive that it looked like a glitch in the system. They weren't just winning. They were playing a completely different game in a completely different dimension. The emotional gravity of this record reached its peak when fans realized that the Top Social Artist Award at the Billboard Music Awards, which BTS won 6 years in a row, was essentially a physical manifestation of this digital dominance, a trophy that symbolized the transition of power from traditional gatekeepers to a decentralized global community. But here is the most shocking part of the story. This record might actually be eternal because Billboard eventually paused and then fundamentally restructured how they track social data. Many believe because the sheer overwhelming power of the BTS army had rendered the original Social 50 chart broken. One group was so dominant for so long that the chart no longer provided a competitive landscape for any other artist to exist. We are talking about a record so heavy that it literally caused the platform to buckle under its weight, forcing the industry to rethink how it measures popularity in an age where one fandom can mobilize millions of people in a matter of seconds. Reflecting on this from our current 2026 perspective, as the group prepares for their massive reunion world tour, this record serves as a reminder of the golden age of digital connection, when 7 boys from a small agency used their phones to build a bridge across the ocean, proving that intimacy is the ultimate currency of the 21st century. It wasn't just about the numbers, it was about the way Jin's dad jokes would trend worldwide within minutes, or how RM's museum visits, Namjuning, would inspire millions to go to galleries, or how a single Vante photograph from V would spark a global art conversation, or how Jungkook's late-night karaoke sessions would feel like a private party for 10 million people at once. It was a level of transparency and vulnerability that shattered the mystique of the traditional pop star and replaced it with something far more potent, genuine human companionship. To even dream of breaking a 210-week record at the top of a global social chart today would require a new artist to not only be a musical genius, but to also maintain a perfect, unblemished, 24/7 connection with the entire human population for over 4 years, without a single mistake, a single dip in interest, or a single moment of silence. It is a record forged in the fires of a digital revolution, a testament to the time when BTS and ARMY became the undisputed masters of the internet, creating a digital fortress so strong that even the biggest Western labels couldn't find a way in. When we look back at those 210 weeks, we aren't just looking at a chart. We are looking at the history of how the world learned to love across borders, how a language barrier was dismantled by a hashtag, and how 7 voices from Seoul became the heartbeat of the entire digital universe. It remains a monolith of achievement, a towering, data-driven proof that while many can be popular, only BTS could turn the entire world into a single, unified conversation that lasted for years. This record isn't just a number, it is the definitive proof that the internet belongs to the people who use it to spread love, and for 210 weeks, that love was directed at 7 men who gave it all back, 10 times over, until the chart itself couldn't hold anymore. It is the record that killed the chart because the chart was simply too small for their legacy. And in 2026, as we stand on the edge of a new era, the 210-week reign remains the ultimate wall that no one has even come close to touching, a ghost of a dominance that redefined the very meaning of the word social. Number 2. Special Presidential Envoy for Future Generations and Culture, the diplomatic passport to history, the UN General Assembly takeover, the most watched moment in United Nations history. To truly understand why this record sits at the penultimate spot on our list, you have to look past the flashing lights of the concert stage and into the solemn, high-stakes corridors of the United Nations headquarters in New York, where, for one historic week in September 2021, the world's most famous boy band transitioned into the world's most powerful diplomats. We are talking about a feat so unprecedented that it sounds more like a plot from a political thriller than the reality of a K-pop group. BTS became the first ever pop artist to be officially appointed as special presidential envoys for South Korea, complete with red diplomatic passports and a mission to represent the voices of future generations on the global stage. This isn't just a record of popularity, it is a record of cultural legitimacy that no other musical act has ever touched in the history of modern international relations. When RM, Jin, Suga, J-Hope, Jimin, V, and Jungkook walked into the General Assembly Hall, they weren't there to perform for fans, they were there to address world leaders, heads of state, and the UN Secretary-General himself, bringing with them the collective anxiety, grief, and hope of millions of young people who had survived the global pandemic. The statistical side of this record is equally mind-blowing. When BTS took the podium for their speech at the SDG moment, the official UN YouTube livestream, which usually garners a few thousand viewers, suddenly surged to over 1 million concurrent live viewers, effectively breaking the digital infrastructure of a global peacekeeping organization. This was the most watched session in the 76-year history of the United Nations, a moment where the soft power of Hallyu became a hard reality in global politics. What makes this record truly impossible and likely to stay in the hands of BTS forever is the sheer gravity of the moment. They didn't just give a speech. They turned the entire UN headquarters into a music video set for Permission to Dance, dancing through the aisles of the General Assembly and out onto the lawns. A permission that would likely never be granted to any other artist in our lifetime. Each member shared a piece of their soul during that 2021 address, rejecting the label of a lost generation, and instead renaming the youth of today as the Welcome Generation, a generation that welcomes change instead of fearing it. This was a direct follow-up to their legendary 2018 Speak Yourself speech at the UN, where RM's words about loving yourself regardless of your mistakes became a mantra for millions, proving that their influence wasn't a temporary trend but a sustained, decade-long commitment to social change. In 2026, as the world of diplomacy becomes even more fragmented, looking back at that unified moment when 7 Korean men were given the authority of government officials to speak for the planet feels like a fever dream that only BTS could have made real. They were literally given the key to the most exclusive room in the world, and they used it to open the door for everyone else. To break this record, another artist would need not only the global reach of a superstar but the flawless reputation and cultural weight required to be trusted by a sovereign nation to represent its interests at the highest level of government. It requires a level of clean influence and intellectual depth that BTS spent years cultivating through their Love Myself campaign with UNICEF, which has raised millions of dollars to end violence against children. When you see those 7 red passports, you aren't looking at travel documents. You are looking at the definitive proof that BTS had moved beyond the music category and into the human history category. They shattered the idol stereotype by proving that a pop group could be taken seriously by the leaders of the free world, forcing the international community to acknowledge that the power of art is sometimes more effective than the power of politics. Can you imagine the pressure of standing at that podium, knowing that every world leader is watching you, but also knowing that 10 million kids are counting on you to say the right thing? This record is a monument to the bridge they built between the elite and the everyday, a bridge that is now paved with the footsteps of 7 boys from Seoul who refuse to stay in their lane. It is a record of dignity, a record of diplomacy, and a record of a global heartbeat that found its voice in the halls of the UN. As we prepare for the final, ultimate record on our list, let the red passports of BTS serve as a reminder that their legacy isn't just about selling out stadiums, it's about changing the way the world listens to the people who will inherit it. Number 1. Guinness World Record for the most streamed group of all time on Spotify, The Digital Eternity, The Sound of 70 Billion Souls, the absolute conquest of the global ear. To truly grasp the weight of this final, most gargantuan record, you have to stop thinking about music in terms of charts or trophies, and start thinking about it as the literal soundtrack of human existence. Because what BTS has achieved on Spotify isn't just a record, it is a digital empire that spans every continent, every time zone, and every possible human emotion. We are talking about a milestone that is so vast, so statistically overwhelming, that it actually defies the traditional logic of the music industry. As of our current vantage point in early 2026, with the group standing on the precipice of their most anticipated reunion tour in history, the total stream count for BTS has climbed into a stratosphere where no other group in the history of recorded sound has ever breathed. We are looking at a cumulative total that has soared past the 60 billion and even the 70 billion mark, a number so large that if you played every BTS stream back to back, you would be listening for hundreds of thousands of years without a single second of silence. This journey to the top of the Spotify mountain didn't start with a bang, it started with a whisper, back in 2013, when 7 boys from a tiny room in Seoul were uploading covers to SoundCloud because the mainstream platforms didn't even know they existed. Think about the sheer raw determination it took for RM to lead this group from those humble beginnings, where they were literally handing out flyers on the streets of Los Angeles, to becoming the undisputed kings of the world's largest streaming platform. The most streamed group record is unique because it isn't based on a single moment of hype or a one-hit wonder. It is a record of pure, unadulterated endurance. It is built on the backs of Dynamite, which became a multi-billion stream monster, Butter, which continued the streak, and Boy With Love. But the real secret to this record's immortality lies in the B-sides and the deep cuts that fans listen to every single day, as if their lives depended on it. We are talking about the Spring Day Effect, a song released years ago that still garners millions of streams every single week, acting as a perennial queen of the charts that refuses to abdicate her throne. It is a song that has become a national anthem of longing and hope, proving that BTS doesn't just make music to dance to, they make music to live by. When you look at the Spotify Billions Club, you see a few names here and there, but BTS has turned it into their personal lounge, with multiple tracks crossing that legendary 10-digit threshold, a feat that only a handful of solo titans like Taylor Swift or Drake can even dream of competing with. But here is the emotional core of this record. For the ARMY, a stream has never been just a click or a play. It is a way of saying, I am here, I am listening, and you saved me. During the long years of the group's mandatory military service, while the world waited for this very moment in 2026, the streaming numbers didn't drop, they actually increased, as fans used the music to bridge the gap of physical absence, creating a digital loop of love that never stopped spinning. Each member's solo work also fed back into this massive ocean of data, with Jungkook's 7 and Standing Next to You breaking solo records left and right, yet always reinforcing the primary brand of the 7-member brotherhood. This record is widely considered the most impossible to break because it requires a level of catalog strength that takes decades to build, yet BTS did it in just over one. To even come close to this, a new group would have to release hundreds of songs that all maintain a high level of daily engagement for years on end, without ever losing their cultural relevance or their emotional connection to the audience. In a world where music is often treated as a disposable commodity, BTS has created a library of sound that people return to as if it were a sacred text. Reflecting on this in 2026, as the group prepares to drop their first full group studio album in years, the Spotify King title feels less like an award and more like a permanent state of being. The sheer scale of the 70 billion stream milestone means that even if BTS never released another song, it would take decades for any other group to even catch a glimpse of their shadow. This record is the ultimate proof that the language barrier is a myth. When people from the favelas of Brazil, the cafes of Paris, the skyscrapers of Tokyo, and the rural towns of America are all pressing play on the same Korean lyrics, you realize that BTS has achieved a level of global synchronization that the world has never seen before. It is the sound of a borderless world, a testament to the fact that 7 voices from a small agency could eventually become the loudest sound on the planet. As we close this list of the 7 wonders of the BTS era, the Spotify record stands as the most profound of them all, because it is the one that is powered by us, the listeners. It is a record of our late-night study sessions, our morning commutes, our heartbreak, and our greatest joys, all distilled into digital bits and projected back to 7 men who gave us everything. This isn't just the #1 record, it is the definitive story of the 21st century's greatest musical revolution, a revolution that was televised, tweeted, and most importantly, streamed, until the very concept of impossible was left in the dust. The most streamed group of all time isn't just a title, it is the eternal echo of a bond that changed the world forever. And in 2026, that echo is only getting louder, proving that the legend of BTS isn't just history, it's the future.